morning. How are you? Welcome to episode 5 of Caffeinated Change on this glorious, sunny July 1st. As always, I'm starting with my land acknowledgement, especially on this day. On July 1st, on Canada Day. I'm in Verdun, Quebec, and I acknowledge and recognize that these are unceded Indigenous territories. I recognize the Gunyokahaga Nation as the guardians and custodians of these lands and waters. Again, another heavy week. There's so much to learn. There's so much to process. There's so much for us to become more present to on this day and always. But today is an opportunity for us to become especially present to the history of the lands that we're on. I want to take some time at the beginning of Caffeinated Change today to talk about Canada Day, just really briefly, because obviously this work of unpacking the history of these lands, of Canada, of what Canada represents to the Indigenous peoples, to the pain and suffering that has been caused to the Indigenous peoples of this land. There's so much unpacking and processing to do on a personal and on a collective level. And I guess I'm here to do my part in a small way to support you in your own processing and your own contemplation, and to demonstrate through my vulnerability and humility, my eagerness to learn and to recognize the role that I play in upholding systems of oppression, and also the role that I play in moving towards a more hopeful, inclusive, optimistic future. So, I was going to read the intro. I'll just read it. This is like, you look up what is Canada Day on Wikipedia, and this is what it says. Just in the first intro paragraph. Canada Day is the National Day of Canada, a federal statutory holiday. It celebrates the anniversary of Canadian Confederation, which occurred on July 1st, 1867, with the passing of the Constitution Act in 1867, where the 3 separate colonies of Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick were united into a single dominion within the British Empire called Canada. 3 separate colonies. Canada is based on colonization of land that's unrecognized, unceded by Indigenous peoples. Very basically, we are celebrating the coming together of those colonies under one empire, the British Empire. And there's so much more story there, And today, there are people who are choosing, and I'm one of them, to wear orange or black in lieu of celebrating Canada Day, to recognize the mourning and the grief period that the Indigenous peoples are going through and that Canadians are going through, that we're all going through, about all of the victims of the residential schools. And we wear orange on Canada Day. The act of wearing orange on Canada Day was inspired by Orange Shirt Day, which came from residential school survivor Phyllis Jack Webstad, who shared her story at a St. Joseph's Mission Residential School commemoration project and reunion event held in Williams Lake, BC in the spring of 2013. Webstad recounted her first day of residential schooling at 6 years old when she was stripped of her clothes, including the new orange shirt her grandmother bought her, which was never returned. These just like atrocious numbers that are coming out these days of mass grave sites. And it's really just the beginning of the uncovering of the atrocities that were done to these children. Every single one of those numbers is a person. Every single one of those numbers is a child with potential. And just imagine how different Canada would be, our land would be, our community, our collective community would be if those families had not been separated, torn apart, if those children had not been brutalized, if they'd gotten the chance to live their lives fully as themselves, to experience their cultures, to nurture their cultures through their own growth, through their education, through their learning. Just imagine how different this would be. One way that you can take a moment today to become more present to the experiences of the Indigenous peoples in Canada is to read at least a part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report, which was released in 2015. It's very, very eye-opening to dive into. And I want to take the opportunity to recognize that although the information that's coming out of the residential school grave sites, although this is devastating, uncovering the truth is part of reconciliation. Just like when we are going through periods of change, recognizing where we are right now, the recognition of the real current state of affairs is part of charting a path forward. We need to become present to what's actually happening around us. We can't be ignorant and avoidant. We need to acknowledge the real situation, not just for ourselves, but for the people we are in community with. And that is the first step. That awareness is the first step to change. This is called Caffeinated Change because I'm tackling culture building questions, specifically in organizations, but this is about culture building. You know, culture building in organizations is like culture building in community, in sports teams, in families, in relationship. It's all intertwined because it's all about relationship building. It's all about trust building. It's all about dynamics of connection and communication, and how we build culture collectively, the new and improved culture of the future of Canada. The process that we use to do that is very similar to the process that we would use in an organization to move towards a new and improved culture. It begins with the truth. It begins with looking at the truth, recognizing the truth, and the good and the bad, you know, and that also for us as individuals, as individual leaders, means looking at ourselves and becoming truthful to all of our facets, to all of the different sides that we bring to our work, to you know, our strengths and weaknesses, to what we would consider faults, to our own blockages, to our baggage, to the negative communication patterns that we bring into our relationships, to the preconceived notions, to the biases. We need to recognize these pieces in order to address them. We need to become curious and objective to ourselves so that we can see ourselves more truthfully, forgive ourselves, accept ourselves, love ourselves, and invite others into a more honest relationship as we move forward. Reconciliation cannot happen without truth, and change cannot happen without a recognition. It's all intertwined. You know, our relationship with ourself is connected to our relationship with community, and our relationship with community is connected to our relationship with the collective. And that means that us as individuals play a role in moving our entire nation forward. We play a role by recognizing the ways that we uphold systems of oppression and the ways that we support inclusive environments. This is heavy shit for a caffeinated change on a Thursday morning, especially talking into the void, you know. I wonder how you're all doing, if you're out there, how you're feeling about today and how you've been feeling about the news, if you're in Canada, about the news that's been coming out. Maybe this comment section is not the place to do it, but I'm always open to creating space for people to process and to question and to look at themselves and the roles that they play. So I'm here, and I'm here for you, and I believe in you. What I wanted to talk about today on Caffeinated Change is the fact that grief and loss is part of the process of change. There's so much excitement and hopefulness and optimism, I hope, for all of you, and for me anyways, when I look forward into the future. There's so much potential, you know, there's so much creative possibility. There's so much good that exists in the future. And in order for us to step in that direction, and we will be letting things go. We will be grieving the past. There's a grieving and a mourning process that's a part of change that we don't always talk about. Even in organizations, when we want to move towards a more hopeful change, a future culture, a new market, a new product development, there's a letting go of what was in the past. And that letting go and that grieving and that mourning is not always recognized with people in positions of leadership. Our tendency is to jump into action, to push for productivity, to move straight into choices and decision making, and not really to sit and to reflect on what we are letting go of. I was talking to a friend yesterday who's pregnant with twins, very pregnant with twins, and she said the whole pregnancy process was extremely challenging for her emotionally and mentally, to recognize just how different her life would be. And then also to feel exceptionally exhilarated about what's to come, but then to flip-flop between these two extremes of, I'm exceptionally excited about what's to come, and also I have this mourning of what used to be. And the mourning, moving through that mourning, was a part of her process, her pregnancy process. Becoming comfortable with the fact that her life was going to change. Maybe she was going to change. She said she came to a place where she found comfort in the fact that she recognized that change is constant. It's always around us. And of course, it is always around us. It's always happening to us. It's always happening to our environments. Change is constant, but we don't always feel like it is. We feel like we change with these milestones in life. And oftentimes in organizations, leaders feel like they change with milestones, with strategic plans quarterly. But the truth is that change is always happening. But it is important for us during these big periods of shifts and of change to mourn, to grieve, to recognize what's happened in the past, and to take some time to sit with that loss, the loss of comfort, the loss of what was. Thank you, Bob, for engaging. I'm just seeing the comments coming in. I'm on StreamYard, so my comments are always a little delayed, unfortunately. So let me read this. Reading the reports was shocking to realize that the United Anglican, Presbyterian, and Catholic Church, along with Government of Canada, were all held complicit to the horrors of the residential schools, and monies were levied to the families. The amount of compensation which was levied to these wealthy religious entities amounted to a slap on the wrist compared to the moral and violent breakdown that transpired. I wonder who will be held accountable after this week's revelations. Is there such thing as accountability? Is there such thing as justice? Is there such thing as fully recognizing what happened there? How do we move forward from this point? We need to be contemplating this as individuals. I'm appreciative of you, Bob, for engaging. Thank you for taking the time. And I hope anyone who's here, anyone who watches this after the fact, takes a moment to do your own research, to become even one step more informed. And I'm a strategist. I'm a strategist for change. And so I can't help but think of what the strategy is for moving forward. As I was saying before, truth is part of reconciliation. Recognition is part of change, recognizing where we've been, mourning what happened, mourning the loss, grieving what happened, and really giving what happened the space to be recognized is part of us creating an environment that can really shift in the future. My strategic approach for the future is to commit all of my work to creating safe environments for individuals to show up honestly as themselves, respected as individuals, safe to express their identities. And one thing that I really hold myself accountable to, one responsibility that I feel that I have as a strategist working with organizations is never to divide the individual from the organization or the company, and never to divide the company from the community and the collective that it is a part of. Companies are groups of people. People have feelings, people have histories, people have personal experiences that deserve to be heard and respected. We can't separate out business from personal any longer. It does us all a disservice. It leaves us unhealthy, unhappy, stifled, oppressed. It suppresses our creativity at the very least. And so it's important for me, at the very base of everything that I do, foundationally, that I really take the time to recognize that individuals make up the collective and individuals make up the community. This is actually an interesting sort of transition into the question that I wanted to tackle today. I'm going to try to tackle it quickly because I'm almost at 20 minutes right now. I had a question today or this week about whether, so right now, professionally, with my business, what I'm doing is I'm contemplating how, first of all, as a consultant, as a designer of leadership and culture building programs, what do I do that is scalable? What is viable as a business offer apart from my consulting hours? I'm contemplating what I want for the future. And this sort of consulting work can be heavy and emotionally draining. It really requires a lot of time and energy from me and a lot of commitment from me and the person in front of me, which means that I can only have so much impact when I'm working one-on-one only. So I'm contemplating how I can create a culture building offer that is scalable, that is modular, that can impact positively as many people as possible, and that can empower the people that I work with to take ownership of culture building so that they're the ones who will take the baton when I'm gone and step into their culture building efforts, informed, empowered, clear-headed, transparent, ready to tackle what's ahead. So I'm working with a business advisor right now who asked, can culture building be modular? Are there modules to culture building? Is there a standard approach to culture building that can be replicated? And that's a question that I wanted to tackle today in Caffeinated Change. There is a standard, structured, strategic process to culture building that happens in modules, that happens in chunks. That can be replicated. That can become modular. That can be trained. What's really exciting about, or not exciting, yes, it's exciting for me because this is what I do professionally, but where it becomes really impactful is not in the process of culture building, but it's what happens in each one of these steps. I see myself when I'm doing culture building work as someone who's holding space for the emotions and the chaos and the creativity and the unknown of culture building. Through this structured process, through modular steps, what I'm doing is I'm creating a container within which the companies that I work with, the teams that I work with, the leaders that I work with can experience the true, beautiful messiness of working on building an intentional culture. Because it is messy, it's emotional, it's soulful, it's personal. I create an environment, not always physical. Sometimes it's an intellectual environment. Sometimes it's a metaphorical environment for people to experience their own reactions and their own individuality and their identities through the process of culture building. So there are essentially two overlapping lenses when it comes to culture building work. There's the process and the structure, which is replicable and modular and happens in steps. And overlaid on top of that strategic process is this very, very, very human, very emotional, intuitive, reflective, soulful experience. And what we need to do as leaders, as culture strategists, is to create moments for people to land in their humanity within this process of culture building. I want to leave you with some guidance from, did I screenshot it? I did. From Claude Silver, who's the Chief Heart Officer at VaynerMedia. I love Claude. And this is for inspiration for how you create space for people during the culture building process, how you as a leader can support humans in your team in their own experiencing of change and of culture building, how you can invite them into the whole messy process that I was just describing. So Claude says, some ways to support your team in good times, challenging times, and in unknown seas, AKA going back to the office / hybrid, or, facing the systemic shifts that your organization will shift in order to become more inclusive, more equitable, more just, facing a new market, facing a big hiring push, facing a merger or an acquisition. Claude says, as a leader, you can be a source of possibility. Be a source who listens to understand. Be a source of positivity. Be a source of practicality. Be a source of flexibility. Be a source of joy. And we need to remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. And the hashtags that Claude uses are emotional optimism, leadership, and transformation. In the face of all of the messiness of change, and sometimes the weight and the darkness and the grief and the mourning of a period that precedes change, it is our responsibility as leaders to be optimistic and hopeful, I believe, and I am, for the future of this nation. Really, I think there are some really emotionally heart open, engaged leaders that are setting the course for what it looks like to address real problems, to build truly impactful solutions, to build inclusive teams where people can really access their potential. And I see it in the clients that I'm working with, and I see it more and more, which does fill me with a lot of hope. And I hope it fills you with a lot of hope too. I want to wish you a beautiful morning, a beautiful day, beautiful end of week. Cheers to you and all the work that you're doing. And thank you for spending the time with me. Je vous aime. Have a beautiful week. Talk to you soon. I'm here for whatever questions, discussions, comments about change, transformation, about what's possible. Let's visualize it together.